Scholar is going to be obscene in Endwalker. So this video is honestly totally inspired by a Discord conversation that I just had talking about the Scholar and its 1.5 second cast time Broil on my Discord server. And honestly, I genuinely feel like Scholar is going to be tremendously powerful in Endwalker. We already know from the live letter that all healers are having their basic spammable, and in Scholar's case, Broil, lowered to 1.5 seconds of cast time. Likewise, the baseline GCD is still going to be 2.5 seconds without any spell speed, but the main thing is that it's going to function similar to Astrologian's Malefic does and how it does today. The results? Terrifying and beautiful at the same time. Please do not nerf me, bro. But please don't get me wrong, I am not here to suddenly contradict myself and take back the massive quality of life issues that I have brought up multiple times on this channel. Ghosting of pet actions sucks. Dissipation locking you out of all fairy skills including your fairy's background persistent healing sucks. I'm actually gonna leave that in. Big fairy transform locking you out of dissipation can suck. FEY Union stacks being lost because of death sucks. Broil spam being boring sucks. Needing to place the fairy after, or how to say it, needing to place the fairy or you have a huge delay on some abilities sucks. No fairy control over who they heal sucks. No baseline raw heal like what Sage is getting with Prognosis from the live letter tooltips sucks. We have Sakor and Sakor spamming sucks. Running out of energy drain stacks, or the real concept of running out of gas in a pinch because Aether Flow is on a 60-second timer, where we already know that the Sage of Serpent Skull system gets run of the charges of Serpent Skull back at every 20-second intervals, rather than waiting for that full 60 seconds for another charge. The Aether Flow system kind of sucks in that regard too. Like, my problems with the Scholar are largely quality of life, and I'm not backing away from that when I'm saying that in this video, and I know I need to get this out there because people are going to be like, haven't you complained about that? And absolutely I have. And this is why factually I can tell you all, I know I'm going to be doing a lot more Sage in the future because it is exactly like Scholar, like 85% of its kit, but without these quality of life issues that have haunted me for years. Stares off into the abyss. Oh my god, sometimes when you stare into the abyss it stares back at you. Oh my god, it's Eos, no! But to just be super clear, my problems have never been about power, and in terms of power, the Scholar has always been powerful. I literally remember on official forums during A Realm Reborn that times were people demanding, like going full Karen, never go full Karen, and they were demanding nerfs to the Scholar because it was unfair to white mages, and then we saw the same thing come up in Heavensward, and then the same in Stormblood. It is really weird to me that in general, like, the player basis perception changed in Shadowbringers, even though Scholar is as meta as any job in 14 can get, not to mention the Sacred Soil buffs that came with Shadowbringers made it unrealistically broken. I'm just gonna say it that way. Sacred Soil is still broken. But the fact is, even now, regardless of general player perception, Scholar is as meta as any job in 14 can get. But in terms of the Scholar, when we are looking at Endwalker, the Scholar is being enabled to a bizarre degree, and we're not even getting into the fact that we don't know exactly what the single target buff that the developers have given them even does. But what we do know is that they are getting the Scholar Shuffle ability to raise the entire group's speed buff, which is going to be very, very powerful. I think that we are going to see the rise of some very bonkers raid strategies like come up. We are going to see mechanics be shifted around. I think that this is going to be a very interesting ability to keep your eyes out for. I think that a lot of people are actually sleeping on it just because right now in the game we have not actually had a in-combat movement speed buff like this that you can apply to the entire party. People can be cheeky and say, oh, you sprint at this time. Okay, it goes on cooldown, now what do you do? Maybe you can use this a second time. Just coordinate the team, everyone uses sprint at this time. Okay, everyone uses this ability, this Scholar Shuffle, at a different time. I think that this is going to be very much an ability to look out for. Results? Terrifying and beautiful, maybe. We'll see. So there's no denying that I am incredibly, ridiculously excited for the Sage. It has been to the level that people have been actively unsubscribing because I'm not talking about Reaper or Summoner or other jobs, which it's always weird when I get comments saying that I'm jumping on the Sage hype train for views. Honestly, I'm going to be very direct with you right now. If I had any sense in my empty head, I'd be jumping and riding the Summoner and Reaper train, which are way, way, way higher peaks of hype. Not to mention I would be doing reaction videos and a whole lot of different things, But I totally digress here, but trust me, I kind of wish I was fangirling a little less over the Sage. It would actually benefit my channel significantly. But my point in saying that is the Sage I'm excited for, but I have barely touched on the idea that the Sage needs to be constantly doing damage or they lose out on that precious cardio prog. And that is a huge problem. Like, listen guys, we're being real here. The Sage's coolest feature with the cardio system is also one of its most glaring, painful, agonizing weaknesses. The Scholar Fairy is consistently spamming Embrace no matter what. It's also automatically changing targets. None of this requires a single thing from you. Not a single thing, not one thing. It's doing its own thing no matter what you're doing. The Sage? You must be doing DPS or you're actively losing your regen effect, the cardio system. Laugh all you want, but during standard progression, it's going to be very likely that the Scholar's Fairy will actually pull ahead of cardio from the Sage, probably by a large margin for a lot of players. And this is the case even if the Sage player is trying to DPS, just because that is the way that prog goes for most groups. Casting Revive, that's a loss of cardio procs. Casting on GCD heals, loss of cardio procs. That's going to include barriers, which yes, you should be using during progression in order to see the deeper mechanics. Like a lot of people watch like world first clears and like the best bleeding edge raiders on Twitch. You know what? 99.9% of raiders are not at that level and will never be at that level. So it's not realistic to be like, haha, we can totally prog this ultimate raid without any barriers. Use your damn barriers. Or another thing that the Scholar has is, what if you're put in a spot where you need to move and you don't have like a Spamble Ruin 2 equivalent, which as far as we've seen, the only option for this would be Toxicon from the Serpent Sting mechanics that we saw from the live ledger tooltips that were hovered over. In this situation too, if you're a Sage and you don't have Serpent Sting procs, you're going to be actively losing the cardio procs as well as DPS, whereas the Scholar can spam Ruin 2. It's definitely a potency loss, do not misunderstand me, don't please understand that I know that. But something is better than nothing. But remember that the Sage is also losing cardio procs, the Scholar's not. Now the last point for this section is, while I do agree with people that cardio weaving isn't going to be hard, it's literally, oh, I pressed a button on a different party member. Big whoop-de-doo. I agree. I do read the comments, guys. I do, however, know that I've played this game for many years and I'm flipping that on its head, saying many tanks, and I say this all the time in game, don't use any cooldowns, and that is literally a press and forget button with absolutely no depth to it. It's like popping Rampart, ooh, I pressed a button when I grabbed mobs. Still don't see it in game. I still don't. But like the summary of this section is, I'm left in the position where genuinely for progression rating, I can see the Scholar offering its own unique set of really consistency, really big consistency on the Scholar as a quality of life feature in and of itself. But now let's pivot and talk about the Broil 1.5 second cast time, and I think many people really underestimate this by a ridiculous margin, especially for the Scholar. Like, I need to say, White Mage is undeniably going to benefit, as well as we already know that the Astrologian is going to do that. I mean, it does today. And then obviously the new job, the Sage, is obviously going to benefit from this as well, because this kit is like 85% the same as the Scholars that we've already seen from past live letter analysis videos. But when we talk about the current power level of the Scholar, which is already very, very much meta and powerful, throwing in a 1.5 second cast time enables all of their very plentiful off GCD abilities to really shine through. And it's at the point where it's not just going to be impressive, it's going to be remarkably powerful. We're talking about crazy things like the fairy abilities, Whispering Dawn, Fey Blessing, that's area of effect healing. We're talking burst heals like Indom or Lustrate or Excog. We're talking about the big fairy summoning Seraph with her healing madness. Just her spam of her shield with the heal combination is huge, not to mention the double constellation spam. She is literally going to stop damage in its tracks. We're talking about augmentation abilities like emergency tactics, deployment tactics to spread the shield. We're talking about recitation, which can get another Aether Flow ability out like recitation. Indom is a classic staple of a Scholar. And we're talking about FEY Union that supercharges the fairy's next few heals to be how to say it, in present day game, it's like 3 times the potency from the fairy, which is incredibly significant, and it allows some level of fairy control, which is very nice, especially when you want this funneled into a tank. But at least we do get that ability to express control that way. And really from there is more like the absolutely busted Sacred Soil AoE mitigation and AoE healing. We're getting Fey Illumination, which has more mitigation and a healing amp. Heck, even even Dissipation, which I think that a lot of people don't use it nearly enough. It allows you to get a personal healing amp, which yes, it only impacts Sakor and Adlo, I get it, but when it's used properly, that is helpful. As well as you're getting 3 more Aetherflow stacks, which yeah, sure, it sucks to lose the fairy, but when planned for, it is super powerful, even though like no off GCD ability weaves benefit from that healing boost. That 20% increased potency on those off GCD abilities would be absolutely a blessing. It, however, is very powerful with planning behind it. Oh yeah, and even Chain Stratagem is off of the GCD. So more than literally any other healer that we have in the current game, the Scholar is going to have such a radical, undeniable shakeup from this change that I very much expect Scholar's power level is going to spike heavily in Endwalker, and it's already very strong, but it's gonna spike even more. In fact, when I've been really thinking over these changes for a while, I've been really wondering if this might actually result in nerfs towards the Scholar explicitly because of how much more of the kit is being enabled from this change alone. Don't get me wrong, Ruin 2 weaving has always been a thing, absolutely, but now with the Broil weave, it's going to be so much easier in the current version of 14 to justify something. Like, I'm going to look at FEY Union as a case example. This is an ability that you don't actually see many scholars use that often because it's just going to cost you, first of all, a weave to activate it. And then if you want to save FEY blessing charges, FEY gauge charges, then you are going to have to take it off of the target. That's another weave, and that's going to result in a significant DPS drop just for a little bit more healing. So now with this change in Endwalker, the scholars, at least I can speak for myself, I'm going to ask myself, oh, I could use FEY Union here and then shut it off. This change, for me at least, is going to make it so that I use FEY Union a lot more than avoiding using it as I do kind of in the current day, because like I said before, it's harder to justify right now weaving it in for like 3 ticks of FEY Union. Let's say that I'm at like 100 gauge of fairy gauge. If I want only 3 ticks to help the tank out, I need to weave it on, weave it off, and that's a lot harder of a choice to make. Anyhow, these are just my thoughts. I'm personally actually incredibly excited to see how the Scholar is going to turn out in Endwalker given all of these amazing changes, and I really truly do believe that this is going to result in a metric ton of positive results for the Scholar. But I do want, I am genuinely curious what people are wondering, and just let me know in the comments. And I should say, while I do expect a lot of haha Scholar copium spam, I do think that when we look at the raw power level, ignoring the quality of life things that I did bring up earlier, because those are still factors, trust me, I am very much acknowledging them. I think that the Scholar, while it's strong today, is going to be absolutely nuts in Endwalker. We have enabled an already powerful healer to basically do what they want to do without that much of a penalty. Like right now, that Ruin 2 penalty is steep. But yeah, as I said, let me know what you think. Anyhow, that's all for today's video. Absolutely everyone, I hope that you take care and that you have a fantastic day.